Good morning and welcome to Love It, a podcast about loving stuff. My name is Daniel Thron. You may recognize my voice from Martini Giant, a podcast about movies, which you can check out at www.martinigiant.com. This podcast isn't necessarily about movies, but people come here to talk about things they love, ideas, concepts, lines from books, moments in time, people, history, anything. If you're interested in being on Love It, I'd love to have you. And you can reach me at dthron on Twitter, or you can check out my YouTube page at dthron as well. So let's see. Today, what do I love? I love driving. I love driving around with no particular goal in mind and drinking coffee and sitting around. Sometimes I'll sit there and read in my car with the windows open and just chill out and look at some waves or some hills. I didn't learn to drive until quite late. I didn't get my driver's license until I was 36 years old because I was afraid to drive. I just never confronted it. And when I finally did get my license, I realized what I had been missing. And so now I look for any excuse that I can to cruise out and see stuff, go on road trips. Last year, my eldest son and I went on a road trip to Austin, Texas, where we went to the Alamo Draft House and saw the crazy Nicolas Cage horror movie called Mandy. He loved it, and so did I. I also love the films of Andrei Tarkovsky, which I've been rewatching a lot lately. Specifically, Stalker from 1979, the original Solaris, and a wonderful movie called Nostalgia. All of his movies are available for free on YouTube from their original production company called Mosfilm, so you can look it up. They don't even make a lot of sense, but their mood really gets under your skin in a mostly good way, sometimes a sad way, or sometimes a creepy way, but it really lingers with you. So especially if you like science fiction, those first two I mentioned, those are classics, and I recommend checking those out. But today, I love talking to my friend Wes Carroll. I'll let him introduce himself. But I'm proud to say that Wes and I have been working together with our friend Gareth Hines on a pretty complex and kind of strange project called Wisteria, which you can see at www.wisteria.ai, which is sort of an experimental playground for storytelling. You can see some making of stuff, and soon you can see the first episode of the show that we're making to support it. But you can also read short stories and play a game that was designed for the experience by Mark LeBlanc. I think you'll get a kick out of it. Here's my interview with Wes Carroll, and I hope you love it. You never know where these things go. This is Love It. I'm Daniel Thron, and the whole idea of this podcast is to bring people on that I think are fascinating and clever and good people to talk about things that they love, whatever those things are.
Oh, wait a minute. I'm sorry. You got the wrong guy. I didn't understand that was a requirement.
But today we have Wes Carroll.
Yeah, there you go. And a departure from our normal high standards.
Exactly.
That's brilliant.
I have known Wes for many, many, many years. We have worked together. We have worked on a number of things together, and we are currently working on a very, very large and complicated artistic playground, which is very
I was going to say, I'd prefer to think of us as playing together, but sure.
Yes,
yeah, have it your way.
And so I'm very pleased to have him on. He knows lots about lots of stuff, and he's a very, very smart fellow, and I'm going to let him do the rest of the introduction.
All right, well, fair enough. If you're interested in me, I'm at wescarroll.com, and I help bright high school students get brighter. I'll just say that much. So are we allowed to swear here, or are we going to kind of keep it PG?
Fuck no.
All right, well, fucking up is what I want to talk about. Failure.
Love this. This is a great one.
Love
yes.
failure.
Yes.
Like, oh my God. And the thing is, I say that in the way that people say, I love tidying the house. Like it's really, I love having tidied the house. I don't really, you know what I mean? But failure is so fucking important that if you don't normalize it and lionize it in your own head, I feel like you're missing out. Like you've got to just lean into it and love it.
Okay, this is very exciting. We've talked about a lot of stuff on the show, and like generally it leans towards things that people feel very positive about. You know, such as like when my friend Chris is on talking about fly fishing, which is the most peaceful, zen and centering things in his life.
Who doesn't love zen and centering?
It's very, very lovely. But no, I don't want to bury the lead, but I know that you have espoused this very ideology to me many times, and it has helped me in my life. So I have a little bit of an idea of where you're going. But when you say fucking up, like what do you mean by fucking up?
Okay, let's wind it back. First of all, let me contextualize this. Let's wind it back 30 years. I'm going to name check my buddy Paul Booten from many years ago. And we were both serious amateur guitarists and songwriters and singer-songwriters on the coffee house circuit, that kind of thing. And at one point he pulled me aside and he said, "Do you know the secret to writing a good song?" And I said, "There's no secret to write." He said, "Oh, yeah. I'm going to tell you the secret." I'm like, "What is it?" He said, "Are you sure you're ready for it?" And I'm like, "All right, just tell me the secret." The secret to writing a good song is to first write 87 really shitty songs. And by God, he hit the nail on the head. And I mean, I've got my 87 shitty songs in a folder, like really, and I can tell you why they're bad. And I had to go through that process to get to the point. I've written some good songs, like, you know, not every song I write is good. And like, obviously different opinions may differ and so forth. But like, I feel like, no, this is solid work. It's because I have a much clearer understanding of some of the obvious mistakes you can make when you're songwriting. And again, it doesn't guarantee the work is going to be good, but it all but guarantees that I'm going to avoid most of the most common mistakes. And now as a tutor, an advisor for parents and their kids, right? One of the things that I talk with my colleagues a lot about is how are we going to get better? And several of them have reflected back to me sort of what I said almost in jest to them early in these conversations, which is, you know, the way to get good is to first just deal with the dumb shit, right? Like you don't need to be a genius. You need to reduce the amount of time you're an idiot. Like that's the game, right? And while, you know, okay, my shingle says, right, I am helping bright kids get brighter, right? There is obviously some degree of expertise on the part of the student that I'm trying to leverage here. But even in that case, so much of it comes down to like, you're a genius and therefore you can get away with doing dumb shit. But if you just stop doing the dumb shit, yeah, it's like we don't need to do the hard part of making you, you know, enormously smarter as much as we need to turn the dial down on some of the other stuff. So for me, failure encompasses all those things, right? It's doing the dumb shit. It's doing it wrong the first time. And really, oh my gosh, I was working with a student the other day and I gave her this, you know, moderately difficult math problem. And she gave me like an answer that was halfway to the correct answer. And then I kind of, you know, we had a conversation and, you know, we discovered along the way, okay, the actual answer is this. And she said, I had that written down on my paper, but I didn't want to say it out loud because it could have been wrong. And it was just like, oh, teaching moment. Yes. Like, that's the thing I'm talking about, right? Yes. I don't know that it's right. Okay. It's good that you're not so hubristic that you don't know it's right. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, that doesn't make it wrong. It makes it uncertain. Right. Lean in and figure it out.
Like when you talk about the 87 shitty songs, you know, like have you ever gone back to any of those shitty songs and then seen something in them that you didn't see before?
Oh, hell yes.
Yeah.
Oh, hell yes. It's often like, it's often stuff like, oh man, this is just garbage. Oh wait, that line is good.
Right.
Hang on a second. What's a setting that would set that line up better? And then you write a new song, right? Or, oh, that's a melodic choice that I wouldn't make these days, but not for any good reason. That's an interesting melodic choice. I ought to play with that, you know, that kind of thing. There's this great story. Ben Folds, right? Singer-songwriter, pianist, has just started to get a little bit famous. So he has access to some famous people. And for whatever reason, he decides that Bill Shatner would be an awesome person to have as a guest vocalist on an album. And it turns out they had a musical collaboration that was like surprisingly, you know, fantastic.
This is amazing.
You wouldn't think it. Yeah, no, it's great. So he's got Bill Shatner and he's ready to go into the studio and have Bill record one of his songs. And he's in the elevator, right? Going to the studio or whatever. And he pulls out this song that he selected for Shatner to sing on, and he realizes, I wrote the song when I was 17, and it sucks. but he's Ben Folds, so what does he do?
Right.
He re-rates the song in the elevator, and they record it that day. And it was great.
Because I know that, like, for myself, like I've written, like, I think all writers run into this, where it's like, there's stuff that I'm writing, and I'm frustrated with it, or I'm like, whatever it is, and I think that it's terrible as I'm doing it, and then I stop, and I just start going, well, I can't figure that out. It's not coming out the way I want, blah blah blah, and it just goes into a folder. And then years later, I go, oh, yeah, I should look through this and see if there's anything to find. And then I discovered that it was actually really good. And what was in my, like, what I was fucking up wasn't the writing. It was how I was feeling about myself during the process.
Oh, yeah.
Like I fucked up a lot of stuff. I have definitely done that. But I think that in the advice that you have given me over, very similar things, it's like what it is ingrained into me through practice is being a little bit less judgmental in the moment. For the longest time, I thought I was terrible at math. So much so that I didn't get involved in sciences I wanted to pursue more intensely. Just like I couldn't get involved because my math grades were so terrible. And then later on, I reached a point where I was like, because I like reading about, layman's physics books and stuff like that. And I was just like, I wish that I understood some of the rudimentary stuff better, so I could more fully understand the big crazy stuff. And so I tried to put myself through a little bit of self-tutoring in math. And it turns out that I'm not great at math, but I'm nowhere near as bad as I thought that I was.
You know what? You know what we don't say? You are the best reader in your neighborhood. That's not a thing we say.
Right.
Like, right. Can you read? Great. Can you math? Now you can.
There it is.
Great.
Yes.
Yeah. Like literacy and, this other thing that, like, we hold ourselves to the standard. Anyway, I didn't mean to totally derail your story.
It's true.
But it's like
because it's really, there's all I needed, like, having a little bit of functionality helped me out hugely in all these other ways, right?
Yeah.
And what was holding me back was, I don't want to blame it all on one guy. This dude, Mr.
God, what a jerk that guy is.
He's actually a very nice guy, isn't he?
He owes me money. Do you know that to
guy.
This day? Is that like a high school teacher of yours? What are we talking about?
Align in terms of how he was teaching and how I was learning.
That's a very diplomatically put. Go on.
Yeah, exactly. And I let it be a scar in how I perceived what I do.
I really want to shine a spotlight on what you just said. I let it be a scar.
Yeah.
I let it be a scar. I mean, not very many people, I think, can look at that situation and take it that way. And I'm not trying to say that we should take on the blame for what injuries we have. That's not my point. My point is that you were willing to assert agency over it, whether it was warranted or not, and say, I'm going to dig into this and I'm going to be responsible for fixing it.
Yeah, the agency is what you can do now, right?
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
Like whatever may have happened to you may have been totally out of your control. Whatever it is, obviously.
Right.
But being active about changing your situation in the present tense is the way that you get control over whatever that is.
And let me ask, is that an easy thing to do in general?
No. No.
Have you done it wrong before?
I have. Yeah, I fucked that up badly. It's just like because you
but
really
it's still a good skill.
There's no, I don't know, how can I say this? Like, the project that we're currently working on is an evolving thing, right? Like that's the core of it is evolution of the idea, how we present it, new ways to present it, whatever it is. And
a lot of uncertainty, a lot of fear, honestly, around that creation process.
You've chosen to take on stuff in this that you haven't done before, right?
Yeah.
And I think that like it's unavoidable that you and me, Gareth, we're putting ourselves in the position to fuck something up. Yeah. Like we don't know what we're doing.
Yeah.
Like that's just the way it is. But the nature, the design of what we've put together, and why I love working on it so much, is that it's surfing the idea. It's not locking ourselves into a thing. It's like it's adapting to whatever is happening for us, and any part of that can be construed as fucking it up. Like we don't know, like none of this is something we understand really. We don't have a full comprehension of even where it's going or what we're doing at any point. And it makes me think of like when you talk about, say, like when spaceships or satellites are orbiting the Earth, what they're really doing is failing to crash. They are falling towards the Earth all the time,
constantly. Yeah,
and missing.
And you know the Douglas Adams quote, right?
Hit it.
Oh yeah, that's it's in one of, oh God, I love Douglas Adams. In one of his Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy or something, he talks about like the secret to flying is to throw yourself at the ground and miss. And it's just
exactly. Exactly.
But you're absolutely right that's literally, in a physics sense, what satellites are doing. Is they're constantly falling.
Yeah. And so it is the choice to be okay with falling, and trusting yourself that you will adapt to. Adapt to what is happening around you, and that gives
and the trusting yourself part is hard.
Yeah, that's the big. I think that's the big thing, right?
Yeah, I do not like what you're describing. I like having a plan. I don't mind changing the plan. I'm not rigid about it, but I like going into a thing, making a plan, having that sheet, feeling that safety, and then I'll change the plan if I need to. And even that, it's like I can't do it in this project. It's all surfing. And I really, really don't like it.
Right.
And it's the right choice. And by God, I'm going to be better at it when we're done. I'm already better at it. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't have to like that part. It's like, it's the right thing to do. And, if it turns out that we realize in retrospect that my contribution to the project was net negative, I will be sad.
Impossible, but I agree. I hear where you're coming from.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that thought. But like that plus a time machine wouldn't cause me not to do it.
Right.
Even if it won't lead to regret, that much I know. Because it's like, okay, I'm doing this thing and I'm open to the possibility that I'll fall flat on my face. And so much of that, really, when I talk about failure, right, I'm talking about fear. Right? Fear of failure. It's a thing, right? It's a cliche. And it's there for a good reason. I was just talking with someone about it the other day who was telling me that in this particular poignant context, fear of failure was really fear of disappointing other people. And then, we went through the whole process of like, oh, well, who might you disappoint? And what do you think their actual reaction would be in a worst case scenario? And it was pretty easy to surface that like, okay, this fear of disappointment is entirely in your head. It's not, you know what I mean?
Right.
But like, that's the script that happens for so many of us. Like, oh, failure, gosh, that would be terrible. Oh, exactly how bad would that be? Well, I would be embarrassed. Oh, yes, okay. And I'd be disappointed. Yes. And you wouldn't get over that for how long? Years?
Right.
No, a couple minutes. Like, just jump in, man.
What is really at stake in any situation, And like, I think because I feel like, there are things like when you say fuck, I mean, like fucking up applies to every single aspect of my life somewhere. And like, there's long term.
You're so inspirational, Dan.
It's fair to look at a huge portion of my life this way and say like, yeah, like might have wanted to correct for that a little earlier, that kind of stuff. But it's, I think that there's correctable fuck ups and there's uncorrectable fuck ups, like where things just are obliterated, like relationships with people, projects fall apart in a way that becomes too strenuous to pull back together. This happens,
Sure.
I guess my initial question is there anything, you don't have to get specific, has something like that happened for you in your life, in creative life? And how did you get by it? Or have you seen someone that you really admire go down that road and not know how to handle that moment? Because there are people that are really practiced at this stuff, that you think are like, oh, they know it, they get it, they're in the zone. And then something happens and they don't recover. Like what is it like? What is the change in mindset that has to happen?
Okay. Oh, God, so many questions in there. First of all, let me throw in that experience, which we value very highly. Experience is what you get when you don't get what you want. I'm not really talking about loving failure. I'm talking about learning from failure. That's
Yeah.
really at the
Right.
core of it. It's just that learning from failure isn't the hard part. Getting yourself into a failing situation is the hard part. And when do you fail? You fail when you get outside your comfort zone. What does that really mean? When you get to the periphery or perhaps overstretch your own competence. Well, we're dynamic systems. That's how we grow. If we stay within the circle of our competence, we are guaranteeing that we are not growing at the fastest possible rate, possibly not even at all. Not that that's necessarily a bad outcome. I'm just saying that if you lean into failure as a necessary part of a landscape that includes improvement in some way, you're biasing yourself towards success there, right?
Yeah.
And like some of the biggest failures that I think back on, I wasn't even framing it in a way to judge my performance. You know, it's like my focus was on aspect A, B, and C of the situation, and in retrospect, I look back and I say, "Oh, geez, aspect D is where I really fucked it," and it wasn't even on my radar.
Right.
You know. But I look back and I'm like, how could I not have seen that I was just marching down this path to, this horrible shit show? But again, experience is what you get when you don't get what you want. Like aspect D is a thing that's now on my radar. You know what I mean? And that applies in projects. It applies in creative pursuits. I'm thinking, I was in a band for quite a long time. We did a fair amount of international touring. And I think about some of the ways in which we were really quite successful, and I'm very proud of some of the success that we had. But I had this great experience of catching up with one of my bandmates by phone a couple years ago. This is years after we'd been in a band. And he was always the comedian of the group. And so he sort of played back for me, it was appropriate to the conversation. I'd asked him, for this, to play back like a typical conversation as he heard it among the members of the band, so he could embody each of the characters. And when it came time to embody me, all I could do was just blush and facepalm, because some of the things that he was attributing to me are like, what kind of idiot would think and say shit like that? And then it was like, oh no, but like he hit the nail on the head. God help me. Like I was that guy.
Right. Right.
And obviously, if I'd been aware of that at the time, how ridiculous it sounded, I would have self-corrected, but I didn't. So, I jumped in.
I'm quite used to being an idiot. Actually, it's pretty. I feel comfortable in that skin now, where I just go, oh, I don't know what I'm talking about. Look at that.
Yeah, I think it's like, again, I don't want to lionize it in the sense of like our aim is to be dumb, but like if your aim is to be good, you have to be okay with being bad, right? That was the whole point of Carol Dweck's mindset, which, by the way, has been co-opted by a number of people very badly to opposite. I don't want to get into that whole thing, but the whole idea of growth mindset really is about avoid the kind of situation where you become successful and you start thinking of successful as who you are. Because if you get to that point, you won't take on anything that could challenge your identity as a successful person. And that's the beginning of the end.
Right. Right.
Instead, it's like, I have experienced some success, and by God, I've experienced some failures.
Yeah.
And this too is in my future, and I'm going to do the best I can with what I have. Just so much more. It's not only more effective, it's also so much more comfortable to recognize there are pieces of this thing, whatever the thing is, there are pieces of this thing, maybe big things, or maybe big pieces, that are entirely in the realm of luck, outside my control.
Yeah.
Great.
Right.
Aim for what you can do something about.
Yeah. Well, it's when you bring up planning, right? Like, I'm a big believer in storyboarding for shoots, right? There are directors who don't storyboard. There are directors who storyboard literally every single shot they get, all this stuff, and stick rigidly to that. But like, what I look like, I storyboard things, and I create a shot list based off of that. And that's so that if I only shoot the storyboards, it's covered. Like, it gives me,
You have a backup plan. You have
Right.
you have a floor. You know it's going to be at least this good.
right. They're like, as long as I get these things, then we're good. And if I can't get these things, it gives me a perspective on like, okay, well, if we can't get that shot, how can I make these other two shots work together that I also need? and like gives me something that I can step back and look at on the day, so I can solve that problem really quickly. I don't go into the day thinking shooting those shots is my goal. Like that's part of my goal. Like my goal is to be aware in the moment of great shots. And
okay, so what I'm
that.
really hearing here, and I'm going to distort this a little bit because I don't know the director job, right? But it sounds like it's at least close to the idea of I'm going to provide for myself the kind of structure that will allow me to be creative without having to fear falling on my face. I'm going to get these shots because I know I can make it work with these shots, and then I'm free to just follow my muse in the moment to whatever I think might be great. It's not only important to have that kind of safety net, but it's important to remember that you have it, which is one of the ways in which I often fuck this one up, right? Is that I forget I have a safety net, right? I routinely will go into a thing temperamentally fearing the worst. But if I step back for a minute and say, wait, what is the worst that's going to happen in this situation? Oh, I'm not going to get the outcome I want. Like, and I even apply it to just banal stuff like, oh, I'm going to rearrange the furniture in this room or like plant some stuff in the backyard. I'm like, oh God, I'm not a designer. What if I, it's like, fuck, you could put the furniture back. Stop it.
Right. Exactly. You can always undo this. This is not the biggest thing in the world. Right. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Okay. A question for you is like, there have been things where I have been dogged about wanting an outcome, and that doggedness, I think, might have been the fucking up aspect of it. Like,
I can hit this one.
Yeah.
All right,
please.
hang on. You haven't even gotten to the question, but
but I think you know where I'm going with that, right?
I think so. So you have said to me before that David Bowie famously said, look, there's David Bowie the artist and David Bowie the business person.
Right.
And I've got to be both, but I can never be both at the same time. In a way that rhymes with that, I've also observed that the way to become a better singer, and certainly singing is not the only thing this applies to, but the way to become a better singer is to record yourself singing and then listen to the tape afterwards. No amount of listening while you're singing is going to get the job done because while you're singing, your brain is busy with singing on some level. Like, yes, you want to train yourself to hear while you're singing, but fundamentally, you want 100% of your brain on listening to it afterwards.
Yes.
Okay. And then it's like, oh, wait, I didn't even realize it. Yeah, of course you didn't. That's why you do this thing. Right. And so I think that being dogged about something is a valuable and often necessary tool to get past certain barriers to success, okay? And that is one mindset of several that you need to occupy sequentially when you are chasing certain kinds of outcomes. Like you need to be dogged all day long, but there needs to be a thing on your schedule on Tuesdays and Thursdays to step back and say, do I still believe that driving in this direction is the right thing? Because every time you take a step, you're not only getting closer to the goal, you're also getting more familiar with the territory in the vicinity of the goal. And then it's like, oh, now I realize, have you, sorry, I'm totally all over the place today.
Please. That's what this whole show's about.
Yeah, exactly. Yak shaving. I'm going to introduce yak shaving to anyone who doesn't know it already. So
I was wondering when someone would bring this up, and I can't.
Oh my God! Finally,
4 episodes.
So here's what yak shaving is. I'm in the middle of activity A. And I get halfway through activity A and I realize that in order to finish activity A, activity B also has to be completed. So I do activity B and I'm halfway through activity B when I realize, oh, activity C is also a precondition here, right? And the joke is that like before long, you're standing on a mountain in Tibet shaving a yak because that's a necessary part of getting the thing done of activity A, right? And I hate that feeling. But what I have learned relatively recently is that hating that feeling is the wrong approach. Because getting to a goal is almost never a straight line. I'm not that smart. Like I'm never going to be able to like see a goal and like, if it's a goal worth achieving, it's going to be on my horizon, whatever that means for me. It's going to be on the edge of what I can do. I'm not interested in a goal that I can achieve easily, generally speaking.
And it's the process that you're going through that is the thing that, I mean, it's corny to say, but it's like
it's true.
The journey is the destination business, but
the journey's destination. And I mean, oh my God, I as much as I love failure, I hate that phrase and it's love hate. And the reason I hate it is I don't want it to be true and I want it to be easier to embody. And the fact is it is true and it's hard to embody.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's a cliche because it's like, fuck, I don't want you to be right saying that again.
Well, because there's a moment of doneness, like when you realize, like, oh, it's done. The thing is done that I have been trying to do.
Sure. Happens in art all the time. Oh, yes, art is done.
Yeah, this is I did the thing that I set out to do, like that, where we don't have to do anything else.
Yeah, sure.
And or at least it's as done as it's going to get, and we run out of money. So now
that's more like it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a famous phrase of just like film. Like I'm sure this is in music, but it's like films are never finished; they're just abandoned. And it's when you abandon it. It's when you come to the moment when you're like, I'm okay with letting that one out, I guess.
Yeah.
But like there's in any project, big or small, but it's like there's a point at which you don't shoot any more footage. There's a point at which you just go, all right, here it is, and I'm going to decide to call this done. This is now acceptable doneness. And I have never, I don't think, I'm going to think about that for a second. I don't think I have ever felt in that moment triumphant. Like I always feel a little bit, like sort of like not quite sad, but sort of like, oh, I'm here. Like I got to that place. And it isn't until a little later days or whatever it is where I have perspective enough to see the entire event as a thing, right?
Yeah.
Because there is a thing that I want to have made, right? There's a movie I want to have made. There's a story I want to have written. And that's what people, I think, talk about when they talk about the destination. Like there's a thing that I want to have experienced or completed or etc. And I want to be able to look at it and say, like, I did this thing, right? But the moment of letting go of it is actually a little hard for me, right? It's a little bit like it's the moment of greatest unsurety, if that's a word. And it's the moment of going, oh, I was enjoying myself doing this, and now I'm kind of requiring myself and everybody else involved to stop doing this, so we can make it a separate thing outside of ourselves.
And there's a context switch there. Like while you're in the middle of it, like your listening ears are really on, like you're really focused on perceiving, taking in as much information as you can about the process, the environment you're in, whatever, because you're in this min-max game from moment to moment. You're looking for the perfect shot. You're thinking about how it's going to play. Like there's all this stuff happening and there are all these micro decisions that are trying to get you a little bit higher up the hill. But when you step away from it, it's like, oh, I climbed a mountain. I want to throw 3 types of fun into this conversation for a second.
Yeah. I love this. Go ahead.
Type 1 fun. Type 1 fun. It's just fun.
It's just
Type
fun.
2 fun. It's not fun, but it's fun to look back on or at least to tell the story about.
Yeah, exactly.
And then, of course, type 3 fun is just plain not fun. But
It's
like type 2
zero
fun.
Yeah, type 2
yeah,
fun.
exactly. 0 fun, yeah. But type 2, like there's a lot to that. Like obviously, I'm not saying cut type 1 fun out of your life, but like there's a lot of stuff where it's like, yeah, when you're in it, you're not getting the benefit in that moment. And yet you lean into it because you know, right, that it's going to be worth it. And then
there is a type 1 fun waiting for me in the future now because I'm doing this, where I'm just like, type 1 fun is now available to me shortly because I'm doing type 2 fun. That makes sense. Try to have as much type 1 fun as possible, whatever it is. But like when you're in a giant project, I guarantee you will have type 2 fun. Like there's no project on earth where I haven't been really pissed off at something somewhere along the way. Like this actually just happened on a big project I'm working on for a year, and it's like I was just like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this thing. And I thought I knew how I was going to do this, and I was like, now I know how I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this. And then I tried to do it, and it was the wrong thing. I had spent money on it. I lost the money. It was useless. And I was so mad. I was so mad. And all of the cool fun I had for the rest of the project, it was in that moment completely unavailable to me. Completely. I was just like, I was out of my mind, enraged. And to step out of that was so difficult. It lasted for days. It's been a long time since I've been that like blown off track by something going wrong. And I mean, I talked to you guys about this when it happened.
Yeah.
And it took so long to try to process this. You helped me hugely in trying to process it. It's the trying to not have lost something is impossible. Like, you can't not have lost a thing. You've lost it. You lost the thing. Like, it fucked up. Mm-hmm. Like, that's it. The only way to regain the happiness that was there before is to engage the available happiness now. Like, the fucked up thing is past, and now you have to replug yourself into the moment, and all of that will bleed back into you, and the terror and badness and disappointment will fade in the face of getting back online. But everything else, trying to get back through that thing that hurt, the only way I could see it was regret. And I was just like, I was so pissed off. I was just like, this, this ruined my whole perception of what was happening. And ultimately, and largely thanks to you guys, like, I was just like, I have to stop looking that direction. Like, I can't, trying to look through this thing that made me mad is going to make me mad at everything else that I see. And I have to look apart from that and towards the other things that I am still currently doing, and let the joy of that come back into my life. The fucking up bit was to leave the present moment and try to fix something that had passed, which is just not possible.
You're so good at that, and yet you authentically have the experience of not being as good as you'd like to be, which they're not really contradictory, I'm sure. But it's been really inspirational to me to watch you do that, in part because I spend so much of my mental energy in the future instead of in the present where I can do something about it. And one of the bits of fear of failure for me is recognizing that sort of living in the future is part of how I've catalyzed a lot of past successes, right? I anticipate barriers and I get ahead of them and that kind of thing. And that's a piece of it too. And yet, if you overdo it and you're not in the present moment, the opportunity cost for that planning is too high because you're not seeing what's right in front of you. And It's like, this doesn't get any easier. It remains complicated.
Right.
And leaning into that, that Zen idea that attachment is the source of suffering. It's like, easy to say, hard to do, important to remember.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that phrase, like, whenever someone says, and I have often said, just like, oh, well, it's easy for you to say, or more easily said than done. Like, all of the things that are worthwhile are more easily, everything is more easily said than done. It's saying something. Like, really important things are often very simple to describe. That's just how it is
to describe.
Exactly.
Throw yourself at the ground and miss.
Like, when I talk with actors, like, I see actors trying to, like, struggling to get in the moment of blah blah blah. Like, all acting is the same thing. Acting is the simplest job in the world. It's the simplest job in the world. And actors will hear that and be angry at me, like, you have no idea the work that goes on. I'm like, I'm not saying anything about the work. Piano is heavy. And if you're a piano mover, that is incredibly difficult. But there's no greater stuff you need to know than the goal is to lift the piano.
Yeah.
Like, that is that. And that's what like, acting is being unself-conscious in an extremely self-conscious position. It is very, very, very difficult.
Right.
But if you add stuff to it that gets in your way, then you're fucking it up. Like, you clear that stuff out and let go of it. And that's how you learn from it, and that's how you plug into it faster. And that's how you avoid the fucking up in the first place.
It's like Laurence Olivier. Someone asked him, how do you do what you do? He was like, I pretend.
Pretend, exactly. What do you think this job is?
Yep.
Oh man, Wes Carroll, I really appreciate your time today. This has been
Oh gosh, are you
excellent.
kidding? Dan Thrawn, this has been the highlight of my week. Thank you for letting me join you in this wonderful little space that you've made.
Well, I appreciate your friendship and your skills and your amazing talent very, very much. And for everybody who is listening to us, the project we're describing, you can check out at wisteria.ai is the seed for this thing. We're just throwing all sorts of random stuff in there, and it's really weird. And you're going to look at it and go, what the fuck is this?
Yeah.
And we don't know either.
Yeah, no, exactly. Wisteria, like the plant, Wisteria.
That's it.
.ai.
Wes Carroll, please come back whenever you want.